perfect well being, the balance in all directions, perhaps not necessarily natural, but a climate that we can introduce, an arena that we suppose or cause by our civility, by our love for the compassionate and full sense of self, the appropriate orientation in the cosmos about what time it is and how we should behave in the context of what arrives to us. For it is a discovery process for the hero, for the entrepreneur, for the maverick, while at the same time he is author of the world and the kingdom. It is most intense. It is beautiful, romantic, and the future is brighter because of our work together. A supreme return to honor. So, for Trey Parker, my beloved spirit animal, I've prepared for you some visual images of the VR proposed scenes when Millie in the attic is arriving. What I did decide is, I think Millie in the attic, it really is that she's like unattainable. And so the only way to actually encounter her is through VR, which means that the characters towards the end of the Halloween special, like right before they figure out how to awaken the Green Wolf robot, they go on this sort of discovery process through what Millie has designed as the landscape on VR. And this is a really good chance to break away from the usual visuals, but we're maintaining the South Park cutout style of animation and depicting a whole new visual and emotional reality. And so I have some pictures that we're going to look at right now. Simply storyboard out a few suggested arenas and things that I was able to discover from my paintings. Really, I really am like Trey Parker in that thing about, it's not procrastinating when you're in the moment, when you're alive and passionate and you're responding like with what's going on. That's usually the appropriate like intensity where, something that is funny, it's sort of born from that immediate nature of like, oh, that's what it is and all this. So that's really healthy for the audience. I'm just saying like so for example, let's say Trey Parker's like, okay, this guy, I really want to work with Pan and I'm not sure how far we can go with him or if it could work out with him being a director. But I would like to do something with him, settle with him, help him get to where he's going. And for that, it connotes the rationale to fly him out to Los Angeles and have, put him up, and then we'll have a meeting with him and talk about what we feel and what we think should happen. Because, we want to send the Green Wolf in the right direction. He needs his own studio. Obviously, he has a lot to say. And I'm going to try to present again, after we talk about the slides, I'm going to go and try to be the Green Wolf and perform for you, Trey Parker. My point is this. Let's just imagine that Pan of the Wild, he's just like scraping along. He's trying to get produced. He's working with, the communication world. It's sort of like there are these divine pockets of things, and one of them is like the communication industry. Trey Parker, like cartoons and toys, are actually a divine form of and the appropriate like cultural mogul as compared to taxing the things that are not belonging to the people who gain from those things. For example, what I'm saying is like, okay, what does the garden give to the maverick who shows up and he's all brand new and he's like, oh, an adventure, a garden. Okay, the garden supplies home and a garden supplies food. But what are the two most expensive things in life? Okay, food and housing. So already, the resident man king person has decided to tax people for the things that the garden has supplied. And the food industry with the cows and the chickens are the ones supplying the resource, but they are not receiving benefit or conceivable gain. Um, so this is where, money is sincerely broken, and it's not a very difficult concept to understand. I mean, the animals. I think one of our arguments about, oh, the animals are fine where they are is, yeah, because the garden gives them home and food for free. Oh, but we're dealing with the serious issue here. It just looks like we're cheating and taxing the children, removing them from the garden, and then boop, bop them on the head with an outrageous circumstance which prevents the renaissance of communication and the discovery process of a lifetime. Okay, so money shouldn't be a system that is against the discovery process of life. Again, the most expensive things are things that are provided by the garden, and we're destroying the garden with our pollution. So it's like, oh, wow, the adults are sincerely operating in a way that is described as dysfunctional. And yet they go on as if they're the tried and true thing, and they're way up there going like, "Oh yeah, we've set the bar, man." Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that in all of that higgledy-piggledy, the reality is that a communication like South Park is divine because people are seeing it. I mean, it's almost free. I mean, people basically, you know, can watch South Park for free. I mean, and then the divinity of toys. Oh, wow, neat. Look what somebody made. And, oh, I'd pay for that. I mean, that's where money should go. Money should all be going into a place where you're purchasing handmade things or you're commissioning work to be done. But food and housing and medicine should be free. And because that comes from the garden. Okay, so what I'm saying is like, I'm trying to describe money 2.0, like the next level of how money should operate. And I'm talking about graduating the system of money through the golden statues to awaken a new phase of life on Earth. And essentially, I would be operating with like combat against these rigid areas such as the oil industry. And I'd just be doing whatever I can to make them, whether I buy them out or make them illegal or set the military on them. It's one of my hopes. Um, but it's no joke. Anyway, so let's look at some slides. So this image depicts uh, sort of a haunted remedy. And this image comprises for me a wolf. There's two eyes here and a nose, and we see like a proud wolf sort of standing there glowing and waiting for the awakening. We can see there's some little characters here lined up. There's sort of this layers, and I really like doing that. I think on the passageway when we're encountering Millie for the first time, um, there should be like a sequence of these kind of benign characters that sort of just zoom by, but it's sort of the relief is full of these sort of hidden faces, and I'd really enjoy to fill South Park up with like these little types of characters that are like animal-esque, but sort of, intelligent little characters, and it's wonderful to fill up the space with not just lighting and dynamic lighting with layers, like you feel like, oh, what's around the corner, and we're traveling, we're moving through, but also these sort of heart stones that glow. and we get a resonance of the power there and sort of a memory of that traverse. Anyway, I did want to depict in this image, I also see, if you could imagine that this is a forehead and this is a nose of Millie, and her hair is kind of going like this, and all of her hair is kind of like here, but this is a face, and she's holding a mysterious mask, which is like a hand puppet. You can see a white wolf right here. It's like that's her hand, and she's holding on to this eye, and then there's this other face here with like a green top knot. So this is my pan character, and they're both kind of walking this way. But he's got his white fur around his neck here, and in his hand he's holding like this mask. There's two eyes, uh, and so he's holding like a mask in his hand, and she's holding a mask in her hand. And so the two, Pan of the Wild and Millie of the Attic, are both walking in a procession down this way, and they're holding these hand puppets, but these two hand puppets comprise the eyes of the wolf. And this mysterious animal with a fang glimmering in the night is a majestic and powerful icon that equates much and awakens much on Halloween night. It is a romance and it is a discovery process. This image depicts this is like Millie, uh, or uh, it's like a Millie character. It's a master source with the little nose and a big eye, but she's kind of wearing a Indian feathers with she's like a chieftain, and she's proceeding in this direction. And what I want to depict here is actually the parting of trees. So this is actually like a luminescent forest where they're traveling between like a green, like an evergreen forest, but all the trees are either like like made of glass, but they're translucent. But they're also luminescent. And there's purples, and there's greens, and there's these baby blues, and so they're traveling through a forest to sort of arrive to the deeper heart of the meditation inside of VR. Oh, this is one of my favorite suggestive images. So when they start to get closer to the heart of it, this sort of snowstorm starts to come down, and you can see this sort of foggy form of like, imagine like a sheep's body, like it's all fluffy fur, but then you can see the face of it is like highlighted like a dark wolf. So there's a wolf face, but his body is sort of in shadow, but you can actually see a bunch of them. There's like a puffy sheep with a little face. There's a puffy sheep here with a little face. There's a puffy sheep here with a little face, and here and here. So what I'm thinking is like animating, like so the sheep's body kind of waddles in. It's kind of like boop 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 boop, but and approaching in this direction. The characters are coming in through here. They see sort of like this skull. There's like this ornate skull image, and it's very suggestive of like these sorts of like snow blown things, but also look like bones. But there's a snow driving in here, but what they're witnessing is like this entourage of a pack of animals. So their little like cotton ball bodies kind of go like doot doot doot, but the disjointed skull is sort of moving in a little slightly different manner. But what's interesting and funny is the little feet that go dee 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 in like tap, they're sort of tap dancing feet, as these characters are like marauding, into the arena to investigate. So there's like this pack of, and it's snowing, and we can hardly see through the blizzard. But anyway, oh, I see. Okay. Like some unhelpful technology gaffes here, but um, what we're talking about is like this different weather patterns or different arenas. I really like this dreamy feeling because you can't really tell what the animal faces are. Like, are they wolves or are they sheep? They're just sort of these uh, characters that exist in this landscape, and they sort of blend in with the snowiness, and so much that you can hardly tell. And of course, this is only like half a minute of footage when we're actually traveling through the VR landscape. Then we get into like a darker, uh, close. We get like past like this cliffside where it looks like this like a pool of water, but we're in a cave. There's just darkness in the background, and what we're looking at here is we're approaching Millie, and she. This is her sort of levitation on top of the water, and she's moving quickly towards this area. Her headlights, this is like her headlamp of like a master source, and that headlamp is piercing its lights into the abyss of water, and the water is shimmering all these reflective things around the deep water, and this is sort of the reflection of her hoverboard and her workstation. These are all filters and parts of her workstation that she's able to access. But this is sort of the shimmery, reflective uh, water's edge that reflects this thing. And so, what I really want to bring to this VR landscape is an excess of like computer components. Like, what does this computer do? But you can kind of sense, like, oh, that's like you can sort of intuit what the equipment is there for, and we can slightly see Millie in here, like frantically going around pushing buttons, changing things, while this sort of is hovering over the water and traveling in this direction, and the group is traveling this direction to encounter the Millie. And so this is sort of an arena like this underground grotto with water, and while Millie is traveling to investigate an area where she was going to install some sort of VR plant or like a hologram brain because she thinks that this area needs a bit of tuning up. And because of a sensor that reads out like a low energy reading, like there's not enough electric interest developing in this area. So she travels over here because she's trying to excite and awaken the entire VR brain landscape. So, sort of her job. And this is a really exciting moment. This is actually when the first time that Randy and Stan and Sharon and some other characters, they actually make contact with Millie. And Millie is this little blue uh, creature and she's sort of lounging on like a reclining couch, and she's got her hand here, and she's sort of idly, sort of like with her finger in the water, she's sort of playing around, but she's actually pressing buttons. And what that does, she's just sort of, oh, hey guys, wow, we've got some visitors. And so she's playing around with these buttons, and what it causes is this sort of uh, sequence that we can imagine is like a factory event of food preparation where a little, amazing little fairy of like a treat is passing through these different wheels and cogs here, and it produces and it comes out through the unicorn horn and produces this sort of bubble of like a fairy light that comes out, and Randy actually eats it. And Randy goes, "Oh, what's this?" And then and he actually eats it, and he's like, "Oh, I can feel it. It's giving." And people and Millie giggles and stuff because it sort of produces these little things. And this is actually a picture I found of the South Park Millie. And so this is Millie with one eye, and this is her nose, and she's frowning. So her expression is here. Her hair is kind of fruity, and she just has one eye. So she's actually a South Park goddess. And so that's what we're considering. We're talking about awakening a new South Park goddess. And this is my character, Pan of the Wild, and he has four eyes. This is like his South Park eye, and you can see he's actually smiling, And he has kind of like master source, like an animal nose, but it also is just South Park. Like he's down here, but you can also see an additional eye, because Pan has four sets of eyes, but this side is behind this Millie goddess, and so back here behind this female Millie goddess is the Pan character over here, and he's got like some glasses, but this is a South Park eye. This is the wolf cowl that's on top of Pan's head. And so we can just sort of see like a very satisfied looking Pan of the Wild. He's smiling and he's looking into the heart of Eric Cartman with his unborn South Park eyes. And he's saying, "Can't you see the goddess of South Park trying to awaken the Halloween special and to bring a transformation to our world? It's a beautiful event. It's a awakening of a new age for South Park and for the world. And it's the divinity of the communication age and the purity of the toy function where we're literally doing the appropriate things that society and money and men working together can produce, and then we're going to win by the right ways and following all the laws as they are today. But then getting the Green Wolf into a position where he can overhaul the American engine and transform it and make and repair the things that we know are dysfunctional. This is actually just a very a very specific image of of my own. This is actually like a Master Source robot, and he has these sort of white antlers. This is sort of his cognitive uh, unicorn focus, and it causes this sort of calendar dots, which affects the way that his psychic focus affects the computer interface. But here's the computer that he's meditating with, and there really is this like zero, just ether uh, space between them. And so these are invisible forces that is between the operator, the technician, the robot trainer, and the robot. And so what actually happens for the robot is a mystery to the person, just as, what's going on with the person is a mystery to the computer. But then there's the way of like the verbal information does get processed, the psychic information, and also the visual cortex is also something that they're sharing because the computer can see the things we're seeing and we're having a visual communication. So it's many levels of the operator to the computer, and that's what this image is depicting. Although this doesn't, this is sort of my art, and it's not specifically tuned to what I thought was, South Park themed imagery. Anyway, sorry about that. Well, I'm surprised that my VR didn't crash. It has problems with, like switching over to photos and switching back to VR sometimes makes it crash, but here we are, it still works. All right. So, I'm grappling with technology. I'm on the edge where, you know, my equipment is only good for so much. Like I'm on the edge where I'm like, oh, I really need production. I really need to be produced. So I'm here and I want to talk more and I want to thank you, Trey Parker. That was my presentation about ideas about, well, let's talk about like what are the VR landscapes? What are these XR interfaces? And I had like a bunch of pictures. There was some pictures of the Vampire King. There's like, you could see a South Park character. He's frowning and he's over, he's on top of something and it's all sparking. It's like, oh, that's totally the game board. Um, with the XR, that's absolutely that. But it was like I couldn't get the picture right and it didn't turn right. But I was like, I think I gave an example. Okay, so from in the beginning of this presentation, I was saying like um about motivation. Like, yeah, we do want to, come up with the jokes like on the day or the day before because that's really the spark of ingenuity. And I understand that. And I'm just saying like All right, I'm hoping that Trey Parker's in a place where he's like, "Oh, I do want to have some like an encounter. We should fly him out." What I'm trying to say is, don't you understand that when Pan in the Wild, when he gets the phone call from Human Relations South Park is like, "Oh, we're interested in what you're presenting about some ideas, and we'd like to fly you out and put you up and have a meeting with you." Whoa, oh my gosh, you know, Pan is going to be like, oh, and he's going to start doing these things and working, and that's the spontaneity, the fire of where the jokes and the really cool stuff can come from. So yes, here are some images of what I'm talking about. Like, see how we could really find some abstract landscapes and go there, and that's awesome for the resource of what I'm talking about. I'm talking about directing an episode of South Park, the Halloween episode. Um, But really, the whole thing about, you know, if you put, so we, just to say, if we put Pan on, first class airplane and he's flying over to Los Angeles, I mean, basically, while I'm on the flight, I will like, I will have so many, uh, ideas and drawings, South Park, character descriptions, all, like all my characters already drawn up and ideas and stuff. It's sort of like right now I'm just feeling like, like I'm, I have so much feelings and you know, for Trey, he'd be like, if I did buckle down and I'm like, and I'm drawing all this stuff and I start showing it, Trey'd be like, oh, wow, look at him. He's putting in all this effort. Like I understand that about being like a very profound person in general, and I respect that about Trey. And that's not procrastination. When you're doing it that way or for that reason. And so like I'm saying, like you guys, like if you want to see, storyboards and character drawings and all that stuff, just have that meeting with the intention of like, well, we want to talk about maybe, allowing him to direct. Whoa. And then the Green Wolf toy, whoa, is a huge thing for South Park, a line of toys and a Halloween episode that is returning Halloween experience to the adults and giving people an adult Halloween party that they all celebrate in. And the exciting thing about this haunted house and this feeling of exploring, and it's very moody, but like while the boys are in the underground, like in this haunted house and hanging out with these Halloween twins, which are voiced by me, uh, you know, they're just having a party. Okay, and I think that that's all, like just spending time with people. This hour-long special where it's just they're laughing and Kyle's laughing and they're telling little jokes and just these little things that happen there, and that's the story. Okay, so when Pan is the director, it is a different rhythm. It's not just like jokes and topical stuff. It's like this experience. And I know that's different, but I think it's different in a good way. I think I bring something really healthy to South Park, not to mention, you know, the, those toys that are produced are going to be really good for business, right? And it really helps us to understand sort of why are we willing to produce the Green Wolf and help him with the bank loans and getting him into a studio, into the Ware buildings, and doing that work that's all up inside him. I need that authentic environment for those amazing themes to come out and really happen. It's the authentic thing about where I'm at right now is right now. I mean, here we are. We're doing the utmost that we can do right now and today. So I just want to thank you, Trey Parker, and you know, I like if we're looking at the schedule and we notice that Greta is going from Denver up, and she's actually on. She's going. She's taking a break. I think that she's not going to be doing any events because she posted that she's exhausted, but she's moving up towards Canada, which means that we probably can't, we wouldn't be able to get her into the studio. However, this doesn't eliminate that she she could perform in a Canadian voice recording studio if that all works out. I mean, you know, so it's still possible. It's not, for me, it's not, because we need to be very careful with it because we're not trying to, it's a tricky living situation. And it's to be lauded, it's to be congratulated, it's to be graduated, it's to be produced, it's to be awarded and get her own action figure, you know and like what I was saying is like that her gusto and her war cry could be the very final ingredient that actually awakens the green wolf, and that would be beautiful. And that would just be something for everyone because we all feel that, when we're watching the news, and we want to support that, but we have our responsibilities. We want to fight against pollution, but we have our responsibilities. And I'm someone I'm like, it's going to take me a lot of work to get into a position where I'm a character who can literally perhaps address these issues and tackle pollution and defeat it even. But this is our world. We need to embrace that it's possible and stop being like, oh, this outrageous, fall like an anti-garden scenario where we're being ripped off. Ah, that's not our culture. And that's not like, hey man, that's what we've built, respect it or leave it. It's not that. And I do love. Oh, one more thing that I want to say about my plan with the golden statues. Really, because Trey's thinking about it, and Trey's really good with games, and he's like, wow, talking about cracking open the dollar. It's an amazing logistics issue, eh? And a wonderful design. Anyway, um, so what I wanted to say, and it's a sort of a missing piece of my idea to help Trey understand what I'm talking about, rebuilding overhauling the system and all this. Really what it is, remember the super cities in the circle in the middle of America. It's like, what I'm trying to do is anchor it through. Okay, so the super cities need to be built, and what they will require as a budget is basically a larger amount of dollars than we have today. Like we have, you know, a billion trillion dollars. Just the number becomes abstract, and so the issue of inflation is actually the relevance of the people and the skirmish of the marketplace and haggling and managing that issue is there. But the issue of like higher financing, the numbers are abstract. And it's just about, can you get the job done and can you perform as a government? Because right now, the government, what I comprise as a government, because the garden supplies food and house, so those shouldn't even be taxed. 'Cause so what a government should supply is not being supplied by the government today. So I am talking about overhauling the entire American engine. Okay, so let me just rephrase it. The way to understand the transition of the cracked open dollar is that it's an economy based on the super cities that will be built. So it's sort of anchored on that. Okay, so you say, and it's not. I'm what I'm talking about is the correct way for a government to talk to the people and say, we're going to build America up and we're going to become stronger. Okay, but it's like a new economy based off of these new super cities, which opens up these different markets. And yes, people can, because they get like a triple of their savings. I'm saying that I'm trying to design it in such a way that basically everyone's like, oh, this is really exciting. Okay, but it's going to take a lot of work and preparation and a team of really smart people who are working and building it up so that it can be presented evenly and awaken like this. But anyway, I'm talking about a system that's based off of an economy of a city in the future. And so it's like the economy of these new super cities, like New America, and then it topples down and people can extract their savings from those new cities and just turn them into regular dollars. And so then, boom, you've tripled your savings. I'm hoping that people would become involved. Okay, that's the whole thing about your vote mattering, and a higher level of, oh, you have a cell phone app and you're able to vote, and oh, it's because there's a list of things. How do we prioritize? Do we want this or do we want that? Do we want this? Do we want that? And then we're actually involving ourselves with the country, and it's like, whoa. Okay, so that's this missing piece that I'm giving to Trey about the solution. Okay, the golden statues and all this is a new economy based off of those new super cities. And so we're looking way into the future, and that helps to understand how we can afford that type of shift. Because it's a like a calendar, and we're looking ahead, and we're talking about expanding. Because I've traveled through America, and everywhere I go, there's struggle and the land is sparsely populated. You drive for miles and miles through wilderness, and there's just nothing there, and it's just like, what? Why are we like suffering all these people when what we really want to do is increase the uneven populace so that people are finding, have food, they're not polluting, they're not littering, it's not making this thing worse, but the garden is designed to be populated, and that there's the potential for robots, AI, and big ships or devices and machinery. That's not unnatural. Okay, it's natural, and we need to overhaul the system so that when we have the enterprising discovery of like, oh wow, that actually works in the terms of robotics, but the reason we're not doing it is because we can't afford it, and so the government doesn't have the appendages that a government should have. It's a huge difference in the learning curve. I mean, I'm talking about overhauling the American engine and a different expectation about what we can have here as US citizens. So, there's a lot behind me. The world is on my shoulders. I want to run for president. I'm working with Trey Parker right now because really the fastest way for me to begin my conversation with people is by directing the Halloween special episode this month with Trey Parker and doing a very special presentation of uh, a surprise birthday party or a surprise party where we're all celebrating in the beginning of our relationship, and we're celebrating, we're having an epiphany, and then this whole thing I'm talking about, like, well, what is the fruit of the age we've been through? Let's not throw it away. It's not all, and so that's why the communication age and then the perception particles and people are causing that this green wolf robot can awaken and change the bad climate change and pierce that veil, and then, oh, that's possible, and then people start to figure it out. Okay, but we need to begin and have that icebreaker. Okay, so we perfect it visually and through the narrative of communication, and then it goes over into the perfection of an invention, a toy, and it's based off of the physics that are rendered in the TV show. And so it really is that. And and that's what I'm causing, right? But the sort of the doily, the fringe, the catering, the icing on the cake, like what additionally activities can you do with the Green Wolf toy, or how do these characters interact? Um, like I see a way of like what we want to do is do the sort of perfect thing that doesn't require like an excess of work, like, oh, and then we want to have this whole background of extra worlds they can go into. It's okay that if it's just a figurine with lamp-like eyes that light up, so there's little lights inside of these giant green eyes, right? And there's opportunities and little things that we can go in, but we don't want to go to so far that it becomes like that's it's distracting from the 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 hope that it represents and the goodness that it represents. And so I understand that, like, when I presented the Halloween special, I might have been like, um not presenting like, oh, and here's a funny interaction and here's some dialogue. Like, just my mind is just like, it doesn't work that way. It's just like you need to be hot and in the moment. And like when we're sitting down at the writing room, I'll be like, okay, so I have this difficult turning point here where, and Trey would just be like, okay, and he figures it out. Okay, so I'm not eliminating Trey from the script writing process. I'm aware that Trey is usually the only, you know, one writing up the scripts and stuff, and so it's a little bit, but it's about our life and it's about you know, let's be real with us and let's do things for our career, but we're also doing things that are meaningful for the people and doing things when things mean something. And that's what I'm trying to say. So I feel that this means something, you know. This whole meditation we've been doing. And I think that trades say like, oh, Pan brings us to a place where we're like, whoa, and that's awesome. And we're not seeing that in the market. We're not seeing that in the communication industry. We're certainly not seeing it in the government. But it's just like, yeah, like 10, 20 years ago, it was cool to be like, oh, the government's weak, but we're really cool. But you're right, because of just of the things that I'm saying about how food and shelter shouldn't be taxed because that's what the garden's supplying. What the garden isn't supplying is genius communications and toys and stuff like that. That's what money should be supporting. And Trey might even confess like, whoa, you know, the communication industry doesn't get supported that way. I know. I'm saying the dollar is broken. All right, the My Little Pony got canceled. Star, got canceled. Like a lot of these really popular shows. Okay, so the economy model where like, oh, supply and demand, like the most popular things will rise up and be supported. That's not even happening. Okay, so it's things that are popular are not being supported by the economy. It's really like we're slumping and it's like, whoa, wake up, Anyway, like I do feel I will progress. I have the ability to navigate and get to places which are amazing, but I'm going to need like a group of very talented people to help flesh out my explaining because not everyone can move as fast as I can when we're jumping around with ideas. And I understand that stuff, but I'm also like, I'm a character who's already in this world of like, oh, housing and food should be free. It's just like, I'm already departed a little bit, but I can hold a conversation. Anyway, thank you very much, Trey Parker, and I'm just making this communication with you to hope that you will produce me and, like I said, flying me out and setting up so that we can talk about this Halloween episode. It doesn't mean that we're committing to anything. Uh, it's just simply we would like to have a conversation and get going and I'd like to find out where Trey really is on his commitment level to producing the Green Wolf and all this. So I just thank you again, Trey Parker. Like I feel like you're doing a lot of the work here. This performance of mine, um, I feel like I like this performance actually contains some of the most critical insights to my presentation with Trey. I was saying like, oh, this is an economy based off of those super cities. He's like, oh, that explains the whole thing. And also, yesterday I did mention, well, I have some imagery that we might work with, and that's kind of like what, but we actually got to see that today. And then Trey's like, oh, I get it, yeah, wow, because maybe they're inside of like a cavern and there's water, so you understand that the exploratory adventure of this episode is through the roof. Okay, so visually, he's talking as a director, he's taking South Park animation through the roof, and it's amazing. All right. So I just love you guys so much, and thank you, Trey Parker and Matt Stone. Please, fight for me, be in my corner, help me get produced. I love you guys so much, and I really appreciate you putting in the time with me. Thank you. It is absolutely a powerful balance of, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I also, I really do need to show you all that I can do. And so let's just make a profound agreement in our relationship that we're transcendent and we're friends. And we've done that, we've made that communication, and it's special and it's important. It's complete, it's perfect, and it's infallible. True love is the answer. It is good.